Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It is finally time to do our prime rib roast holiday dinner, and I'm so excited about this. We don't make prime rib often, but when I made it before, it came out so good. I'm going to keep today's dinner super simple because I don't want to stress myself out, so all of these recipes will be very easy to follow and easy to execute. On the menu today, we are gonna do our super juicy and tender prime rib roast with a red wine and thyme au jus. On the side, we will have some whipped sweet potato mash. For our green side, we're gonna have some pomegranate and pecan roasted Brussels sprouts. And I'm gonna throw in some thaw and rice rolls, but with a copycat Texas Roadhouse honey butter that I'm gonna create. I'm so excited, let's get this started. Okay, so I have my prime rib roast here. If you watch my channel, you know that I only have a small family that I'm cooking for. So this one is just shy of 4 pounds. Look at how small and cute it is. Now, I've already patted this dry so that we can get it ready with our coating. I'm gonna use a little bit of avocado oil to brush on here. And I'm using Bobby Flay's recipe on prime rib roast because that is what I used the very first time that I cooked prime rib, which I was really scared of because prime rib is not an inexpensive cut of meat and I didn't want to mess it up. So I remember being very hesitant about it, but I used his recipe, mainly chose it because of how simple it was. And it was probably honestly the best prime rib I've ever had in my life. And my husband said the same thing. I'm prepping my roast here. It's already tied with butcher's twine. And now I'm gonna cut just a few slits right on the fat cap on the top. And we are gonna fill these with some garlic cloves. So just like that, you can see I've created little slits. And I'm only going in maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Now I'm gonna take my cloves of garlic and I'm just going to stuff them right into my slits, just like that. And this is really going to give us an infused garlic flavor while our roast is cooking. Okay, now we are going to heavily season this with salt. And because we want to create a sort of salt crust here. And don't worry, it seems like a lot of salt, I know, but we're not actually going to eat that part. It's just going to really work to season the prime rib. Don't be scared. You're not going to hurt it. And add some pepper, just like that. I placed my rib roast just on my roasting pan here. Now I'm preheating my oven to 450 degrees. You want to leave your seasonings on here for about 15 minutes before you actually place it in the oven. So for the first 20 minutes, we'll roast this at 450 and then we'll turn it down to 350 and keep checking it every hour or so until we get about a medium, about 125, 130 or so, and then we'll pull it out to make our au jus with the drippings. But that is it for the roast itself. It could not have been easier. Now let's move on. Okay, so now I'm taking out my rolls. I'm just using the Rhodes Thaw and Rise dinner rolls. Now, I've already let them sit out for about an hour just to get to the thawed stage on my pan with just a little bit of oil so they don't stick to the plastic wrap. It's time for them to rise. So I'm just sort of placing them. You can see on my sheet pan here. Now I've just cut one of them in half to create my stem and tree topper. Now, do I know if this will actually rise up into a Christmas tree shape? No, I don't, but be a lot cooler if it did. I'm going to let these set out and continue to rise and proof for at least another couple hours. So we'll set that aside. Okay, now I want to get started on my whipped sweet potato mash, and I already have just a couple sweet potatoes peeled here. I'm using the orange ones, and I want to get these cubed up and into some boiling water. Now, I actually have never made sweet potatoes before. This is my first time, but my mother-in-law made a sweet potato dish last year for Christmas and it was really delicious. So I wanted to go ahead and give it a try this year with a nice, really simple recipe. Usually when I make regular potatoes, I start them in the pot with cold salted water, but this recipe is having me place them in a pot of boiling water. So I already have my pot started on the stove, getting ready to boil, and I went ahead and added a good amount of salt in there. And once we get these in the pot of boiling water, we'll make sure we bring it back up to a boil and then leave it in there for about 7 to 10 minutes until they're nice and tender. That way we can add in all of our seasonings and get them whipped up. So we're gonna get these into our water. Now that we're waiting for that, we're gonna go ahead and just whip up our Texas Roadhouse Copycat honey butter really quick. Now in my bowl, I just have a 1 stick of butter, or technically it's a 1/2 stick of butter. The regular full recipe, which I'll link to, is 1 whole stick of butter and 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. So I'm gonna do about half that because I don't need full batch. Also 1.5 tablespoons of honey. So I'm just gonna eyeball about 1 tablespoon of honey. You can always add more if you want it sweeter. The best part about making your own food at home is so you can adjust it to whatever yours or your family's taste is. And about 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Again, I'm gonna eyeball that. See in there, and I'm just gonna give this a mix. And my butter is a little more melty because I softened mine in the microwave, but that's totally fine. We're going to actually put this back in the fridge while we work on the rest of our meal. So I wanted to get this whipped up really quick while we had the time. I've actually never even been to a Texas Roadhouse, I don't think, but I've seen so many people talk about their butter. You can see here, just mixing it up like that. And I'm gonna give it just a little taste. That is very good. I'm just gonna add a little more dash of cinnamon, and that is it. I'm gonna cover this and put this in the fridge. Okay, it has been 20 minutes at 450. This is what our rib roast is looking like right now. Now I'm turning down the oven to oh, it's got some nice color in there. I'm turning it down to 350 and we're gonna check the temp in about an hour. Okay, our sweet potatoes have been boiling for about 10 minutes now. They are nice and tender. And for right now, we're gonna get these drained. Okay, now I've just drained my sweet potatoes. I'm gonna add them into my bowl here. They're very hot. We're gonna go ahead and add the rest of our ingredients in. So I'm gonna do 2.5 tablespoons of butter. This is unsalted. I also have 1 orange here that I've already washed up because I want to do fresh orange zest right inside. Now I'm just gonna cut my orange in half and squeeze this half right inside. No seeds. The recipe calls for 1/2 a teaspoon of vanilla. So I'm just gonna eyeball that. And also 1 to 1.5 teaspoons of maple syrup, but I sub out my maple syrup with sugar-free 0-calorie syrup. 1.5 tablespoons, so I'm gonna eyeball that. And 1/4 a teaspoon of ground cinnamon and 1/4 a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. This isn't enough to add a lot of heat, but enough to add good flavor. And I'm just gonna do a pinch of some nutmeg. I don't have fresh on hand, but this is gonna have to do. I'm not too worried about it. I'm gonna add a nice pinch of salt and some fresh pepper. And then we can adjust the seasoning after we get this whipped up. Okay, here's our whipped up sweet potato mash. I did add a little more salt, pepper, and cinnamon after the whip. I think it tastes really nice. It has a good balance of flavors, really good. So we're gonna set this aside in a dish for now until we're ready to toast up our pecans to top it off. Now we're gonna work on our Brussels sprouts. This is a 24-ounce bag from my grocery store. And these are wash and ready to use Brussels sprouts. So I'm gonna get these out on my counter. For this recipe, also super easy. I'm just going to trim off the ends and slice them in halves and place them on, I have a baking sheet here. And I think maybe some of the real small ones we'll just kind of toss in there. I'm also very excited about these. My husband and I really love Brussels sprouts. Typically, I make them with bacon, which are very delicious. But I wanted to try something a little different this time. I feel like adding the pomegranate really screams holiday. So we're gonna give that a go. Today, we're gonna be sprucing these Brussels sprouts up with our pecans because I still have a good amount of pecans left. If you watched my holiday treats video, you saw that I bought a whole bag from Costco. And I did that because I knew I wanted to add them into some of these dishes this season. We're gonna go in with a little bit of avocado oil. Just drizzle that on. And I'm also gonna do about a tablespoon of honey. Drizzle that on. And of course, some salt and some pepper. And I have a lemon here. I'm gonna give this a little bit of a roll to get those juices flowing. Cut that in half and do a nice squeeze of fresh lemon juice. Just like that. I'll give it a little bit of a mix. Now these are gonna be going into a 450-degree oven for about 20 minutes. We'll sprinkle over some of our chopped pecans and then put it back in the oven for another 10 minutes so those can roast right on top. All right, these are ready. All right, I just grabbed my prime rib out of the oven. It went to about 135, 137. So I'm just gonna set it out and tent it with some foil so that we can use some of these drippings at the bottom you see to get started on our au jus. And this smells so good right now. All right, so we're getting started on our au jus. And I just have my pan drippings from my prime rib over medium heat on my stove. I'm gonna add just some chopped up shallots. And I have some chopped garlic. I'm gonna add about 3 cloves of chopped garlic in here. And we're just gonna let this saute for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. All right, so now I just have some red wine. This is a cab, and I'm gonna add about half a bottle. And I have some red wine vinegar. I'm just gonna do a couple splashes of that. And we're gonna let this reduce down by half for at least 5 minutes. All right, so I've been sort of deglazing my pan with my spatula, scraping up all those nice bits that were at the bottom from my roast. I think we're about good to go on to our next add-in. The recipe calls for 4 cups of beef or chicken broth. I'm gonna use bone broth today because it has more protein in it than just regular broth or stock. So I'm gonna add all of that in. And I'm also gonna add in just a few whole peppercorns. And I'm gonna bring this to a boil and then reduce this by half and just keep periodically stirring this. All right, my Brussels sprouts have been roasting for about 20 minutes. Now I'm just gonna give them a nice stir. And now I'm gonna add a nice generous handful of my chopped pecans. And we're gonna put them back in the oven to roast for another 10 minutes. All right, so I have my oven set for 350 and our rolls have already been rising for a few hours. Our little tree is a little haywire, but totally fine. They're still gonna be good. So I'm gonna put these in a 350-degree oven for about 15 to 20 minutes. All right, I think we've reduced by about half. You can see it's slightly starting to thicken. So at this point, I want to turn down my heat to low, and I'm gonna add in a few sprigs of my thyme, just like that. And I'm gonna add some salt. And we're going to let this continue to simmer on low for maybe another 5 minutes or so. And we'll give it a taste then and check it for seasoning if it needs more salt or pepper. Okay, we are almost at the finish line. So I want to toast the pecans that are gonna go on top of my whipped sweet potato mash. So in my pan here, I'm just gonna add just a touch of my avocado oil. And I have my chopped up pecans, and I'm gonna add them into my pan here. And I'm just gonna add just a touch of salt and get them toasting up on my stovetop for maybe about 5 minutes or so. Okay, so I got my Christmas tree-ish rolls out of the oven. Looks a little funny, but doable. Now I'm just gonna brush it with a little bit of butter. I have some fresh rosemary from my front yard that I've already washed and trimmed off the stems. And I'm just gonna sprinkle that right on top of my Christmas tree, just like that. And that's done. All right, I have my Brussels sprouts out of the oven and the pecans have toasted. I just have some pomegranate here, and I'm just going to shake that on the top over my warm sprouts and give it a nice stir. And these are ready. All right, so my prime rib has been resting. So first I'm gonna remove the butcher's twine, and then this fat cap on the top that we salt crusted. Trim off just the top there. All right, and we're just gonna slice through our bone here. And that should be simple because you can tell where the bones are right there. Have that opened, still nice and warm. Beautiful coloring we have inside. All right, let's get this plated. All right, everyone, that is it for my prime rib holiday dinner. Look at how amazing this spread turned out. I think the whole thing looks beautiful. And of course, I've already taste tested everything here. I kid you not, every single part of this meal is so delicious. 10 out of 10. You need to try this prime rib, and I love that I was able to do really simple recipes, so I didn't feel stressed out in the kitchen today. That was the best part, aside from everything being so yummy. If you enjoyed watching me in the kitchen today cook up this meal, please make sure you give this video a like because it would really help out my channel. If you want to see more of me in the kitchen, make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any of the videos that are coming out soon. And I am starving. I'm gonna get me a plate of this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.